Hello friends, I'm Ellie. Welcome to Cardboard Design. Today, I will continue to bring you valuable lessons through attractive fairy tales. The story will begin soon, please listen. The first fairy tale, The Beam. There was once an enchanter who was standing in the midst of a great crowd of people performing his wonders. He had a cock brought in, which lifted a heavy beam and carried it as if it were as light as a feather. But a girl was present who had just found a bit of four-leaved clover, and had thus become so wise that no deception could stand out against her, and she saw that the beam was nothing but a straw. So she cried,
"You people, do you not see that it is a straw that the cock is carrying, and no beam?"
Immediately the enchantment vanished, and the people saw what it was, and drove the magician away in shame and disgrace. He, however, full of inward anger, said,
"I will soon revenge myself."
After some time the girl's wedding day came, and she was decked out, and went in a great procession over the fields to the place where the church was. All at once she came to a stream which was very much swollen, and there was no bridge and no plank to cross it. Then the bride nimbly took her clothes up, and wanted to wade through it, and just as she was standing in the water, a man, and it was the enchanter, cried mockingly close beside her,
"Aha! Where are thine eyes that thou talkest that for water?"
Then her eyes were opened, and she saw that she was standing with her clothes lifted up in the middle of a field that was blue with the flowers of blue flax. Then all the people saw it likewise, and chased her away with ridicule and laughter. The enchanter's vow for revenge after being exposed demonstrates the theme of hubris. His inability to accept defeat, and the shame he faced leads him to seek retaliation. The story warns against harboring vengeful feelings. The girl, now the bride, faces ridicule and mockery when her perception is distorted by the enchanter. The narrative reflects the consequences of arrogance and mockery, as others join in ridiculing her. It serves as a cautionary tale against mocking others. The bride's vulnerability to manipulation at the stream, where she perceives a field as water, suggests the idea that even those with wisdom can be susceptible to manipulation. It underscores the importance of remaining vigilant and not underestimating the potential for deception. The second fairy tale, The Sparrow and His Four Children. A sparrow had 4 young ones in a swallow's nest. When they were fledged, some naughty boys pulled out the nest, but fortunately all the birds got safely away in the high wind. Then the old bird was grieved that as his sons had all gone out into the world, he had not first warned them of every kind of danger, and given them good instruction how to deal with each. In the autumn a great many sparrows assembled together in a wheat field, and there the old bird met his 4 children again, and full of joy took them home with him.
My dear sons, what pain I have been in about you all through the summer, because you got away in the wind without my teaching. Listen to my words, obey your father, and be well on your guard. Little birds have to encounter great dangers.
And then he asked the eldest where he had spent the summer, and how he had supported himself.
"I stayed in the gardens and looked for caterpillars and small worms until the cherries got ripe."
My son,
Said the father,
tidbits are not bad, but there is great risk about them. On that account take great care of thyself henceforth, and particularly when people are going about the gardens who carry long green poles which are hollow inside and have a little hole at the top.
"Yes, father, but what if a little green leaf is stuck over the hole with wax?"
said the son.
Where hast thou seen that?
"In a merchant's garden."
Said the youngster.
Oh, my son, merchant folks are quick folks.
Said the father.
If thou hast been among the children of the world, thou hast learned worldly shiftiness enough. Only see that thou usest it well, and do not be too confident.
After this he asked the next.
Where hast thou passed thy time?
At court,
Said the son.
Sparrows and silly little birds are of no use in that place. There one finds much gold, velvet, silk, armor, harnesses, sparrowhawks, screech owls, and hen harriers heaped to the horses' stable where they winnow oats or thresh, and then fortune may give thee thy daily grain of corn in peace.
yes, father.
Said the son.
But when the stable boys make traps and fix their gins and snares in the straw, many a one is caught fast.
Where hast thou seen that?
Said the old bird.
At court, among the stable boys.
Oh, my son, court boys are bad boys. If thou hast been to court and among the lords, and hast left no feathers there, thou hast learned a fair amount, and wilt know very well how to go about the world. But look around thee and above thee, for the wolves devour the wisest dogs.
The father examined the third also.
Where didst thou seek thy safety?
I have broken up tubs and ropes on the cart roads and highways, and sometimes met with a grain of corn or barley.
That is indeed dainty fare.
Said the father.
But take care what thou art about, and look carefully around, especially when thou seest any one stooping and about to pick up a stone. There is not much time to stay then.
That is true.
Said the son.
But what if anyone should carry a bit of rock or ore ready beforehand in his breast or pocket?
Where hast thou seen that?
Among the mountaineers, dear father, when they go out, they generally take little bits of ore with them.
Mountain folks are working folks, and clever folks. If thou hast been among mountain lads, thou hast seen and learned something, but when thou goest thither beware, for many a sparrow has been brought to a bad end by a mountain boy.
At length the father came to the youngest son.
Thou, my dear chirping nestling, wert always the silliest and weakest. Stay with me, the world has many rough, wicked birds which have crooked beaks and long claws, and lie in wait for poor little birds and swallow them. Keep with those of thine own kind, and pick up little spiders and caterpillars from the trees or the house, and then thou wilt live long in peace.
My dear father, he who feeds himself without injury to other people fares well, and no sparrow, hawk, eagle, or kite will hurt him if he specially commits himself and his lawful food, evening and morning, faithfully to God, who is the creator and preserver of all forest and village birds, who likewise heareth the cry and prayer of the young ravens, for no sparrow or wren ever falls to the ground except by his will.
Where hast thou learned this?
The son answered.
When the great blast of wind tore me away from thee, I came to a church, and there during the summer I have picked up the flies and spiders from the windows, and heard this discourse preached. The father of all sparrows fed me all the summer through, and kept me from all miscreants and from ferocious birds. In sooth, my dear son, if thou talkest refuge in the churches and helpest to clear away spiders and buzzing flies, and criest unto God like the young ravens, and commendest thyself to the eternal Creator, all will be well with thee, and that even if the whole world were full of wild malicious birds, he who to God commits his ways, in silence suffers, waits, and prays, preserves his faith and conscience pure. He is of God's protection sure.
The father bird wants to pass on knowledge and experience to his offspring before they embark on their adventures. This emphasizes the importance of learning from those with experience to prepare for life's challenges. Each bird approaches and reacts to challenges differently. The father bird values intelligence and adaptability to overcome dangerous situations. The story highlights the importance of careful observation of the surrounding environment and how the birds respond appropriately to potential threats. The smallest bird suggests seeking refuge in churches, helping to clear away spiders and flies, praying to God like young ravens, and entrusting oneself to the eternal Creator. The overarching lesson is about caring for one's safety in a new social environment and being cautious about potential dangers. The third fairy tale, Snow White and Rose Red. There was once a poor widow who lived in a lonely cottage. In front of the cottage was a garden wherein stood two rose trees, one of which bore white and the other red roses. She had two children who were like the two rose trees, and one was called Snow White, and the other Rose Red. They were as good and happy, as busy and cheerful as ever two children in the world were, only Snow White was more quiet and gentle than Rose Red. Rose Red liked better to run about in the meadows and fields seeking flowers and catching butterflies, but Snow White sat at home with her mother and helped her with her housework, or read to her when there was nothing to do. The two children were so fond of each another that they always held each other by the hand when they went out together, and when Snow White said,
We will not leave each other.
Rose Red answered,
Never so long as we live.
and their mother would add,
What one has she must share with the other.
They often ran about the forest alone and gathered red berries, and no beast did them any harm but came close to them trustfully. The little hare would eat a cabbage leaf out of their hands, the roe grazed by their side, the stag leapt merrily by them, and the birds sat still upon the boughs and sang whatever they knew. No mishap overtook them if they had stayed too late in the forest, and night came on. They laid themselves down near one another upon the moss, and slept until morning came, and their mother knew this and had no distress on their account. Once when they had spent the night in the wood and the dawn had roused them, they saw a beautiful child in a shining white dress sitting near their bed. He got up and looked quite kindly at them, but said nothing and went away into the forest. And when they looked round they found that they had been sleeping quite close to a precipice, and would certainly have fallen into it in the darkness if they had gone only a few paces further. And their mother told them that it must have been the angel who watches over good children. Snow White and Rose Red kept their mother's little cottage so neat that it was a pleasure to look inside it. In the summer, Rose Red took care of the house, and every morning laid a wreath of flowers by her mother's bed before she awoke, in which was a rose from each tree. In the winter, Snow White lit the fire and hung the kettle on the wrekin. The kettle was of copper and shone like gold, so brightly was it polished. In the evening, when the snowflakes fell, the mother said,
Go, Snow White, and bolt the door.
And then they sat round the hearth, and the mother took her spectacles and read aloud out of a large book, and the two girls listened as they sat and span. And close by them lay a lamb upon the floor, and behind them upon a perch sat a white dove with its head hidden beneath its wings. One evening, as they were thus sitting comfortably together, someone knocked at the door as if he wished to be let in. The mother said,
Quick, Rose Red, open the door. It must be a traveler who is seeking shelter.
Rose Red went and pushed back the bolt, thinking that it was a poor man, but it was not. It was a bear that stretched his broad, black head within the door. Rose Red screamed and sprang back. The lamb bleated, the dove fluttered, and Snow White hid herself behind her mother's bed. But the bear began to speak and said,
Do not be afraid, I will do you no harm. I am half frozen, and only want to warm myself a little beside you.
Poor bear,
said the mother.
Lie down by the fire. Only take care that you do not burn your coat.
Then she cried,
Snow White, Rose Red, come out. The bear will do you no harm. He means well.
So they both came out, and by the lamb and dove came nearer, and were not afraid of him. The bear said,
Here, children, knock the snow out of my coat a little.
So they brought the broom and swept the bear's hide clean, and he stretched himself by the fire and growled contentedly and comfortably. It was not long before they grew quite at home, and played tricks with their clumsy guest. They tugged his hair with their hands, put their feet upon his back and rolled him about. Or they took a hazel switch and beat him, and when he growled they laughed. But the bear took it all in good part. Only when they were too rough he called out,
Leave me alive, children. Snowy White, Rosy Red, will you beat your lover dead?
When it was bedtime, and the others went to bed, the mother said to the bear,
You can lie there by the hearth, and then you will be safe from the cold and the bad weather.
As soon as day dawned, the two children let him out, and he trotted across the snow into the forest. Henceforth the bear came every evening at the same time, laid himself down by the hearth, and let the children amuse themselves with him as much as they liked, and they got so used to him that the doors were never fastened until their black friend had arrived. When spring had come and all outside was green, the bear said one morning to Snow White,
Now I must go away, and cannot come back for the whole summer.
Where are you going, then, dear bear?
asked Snow White.
I must go into the forest and guard my treasures from the wicked dwarfs. In the winter, when the earth is frozen hard, they are obliged to stay below and cannot work their way through. But now, when the sun has thawed and warmed the earth, they break through it and come out to pry and steal. And what once gets into their hands and in their caves does not easily see daylight again.
Snow White was quite sorry for his going away, and as she unbolted the door for him, and the bear was hurrying out, he caught against the bolt, and a piece of his hairy coat was torn off, and it seemed to Snow White as if she had seen gold shining through it, but she was not sure about it. The bear ran away quickly, and was soon out of sight behind the trees. A short time afterwards, the mother sent her children into the forest to get firewood. There they found a big tree which lay felled on the ground, and close by the trunk something was jumping backwards and forwards in the grass, but they could not make out what it was. When they came nearer, they saw a dwarf with an old withered face and a snow-white beard a yard long. The end of the beard was caught in a crevice of the tree, and the little fellow was jumping backwards and forwards like a dog tied to a rope, and did not know what to do. He glared at the girls with his fiery red eyes and cried,
Why do you stand there? Can you not come here and help me?
What are you about there, little man?
asked Rose Red.
You stupid prying goose!
Answered the dwarf.
I was going to split the tree to get a little wood for cooking. The little bit of food that one of us wants gets burned up directly with thick logs. We do not swallow so much as you coarse, greedy folk. I had just driven the wedge safely in, and everything was going as I wished, but the wretched wood was too smooth and suddenly sprang asunder, and the tree closed so quickly that I could not pull out my beautiful white beard. So now it is tightened, and I cannot get away, and the silly, sleek, milk-faced things laugh. Ugh, how odious you are!
The children tried very hard, but they could not pull the beard out. It was caught too fast.
I will run and fetch someone,
said Rose Red.
You senseless goose! Snarled the dwarf. Why should you fetch someone? You are already too many for me. Can you not think of something better?
Don't be impatient,
said Snow White.
I will help you.
And she pulled her scissors out of her pocket and cut off the end of the beard. As soon as the dwarf felt himself free, he laid hold of a bag which lay amongst the roots of the tree, and which was full of gold, and lifted it up, grumbling to himself.
Uncouth people, to cut off a piece of my fine beard! Bad luck to you!
And then he swung the bag upon his back, and went off without even once looking at the children. Some time after that, Snow White and Rose Red went to catch a dish of fish. As they came near the brook, they saw something like a large grasshopper jumping towards the water, as if it were going to leap in. They ran to it and found it was the dwarf.
Where are you going?
said Rose Red.
You surely don't want to go into the water.
I am not such a fool!
cried the dwarf.
Don't you see that the awkward fish wants to pull me in?
The little man had been sitting there fishing, and unluckily the wind had twisted his beard with a fishing line. Just then a big fish bit, and the feeble creature had not strength to pull it out. The fish kept the upper hand and pulled the dwarf towards him. He held onto all the reeds and rushes, but it was of little good. He was forced to follow the movements of the fish, and was in urgent danger of being dragged into the water. The girls came just in time. They held him fast and tried to free his beard from the line, but all in vain. Beard and line were entangled fast together. Nothing was left but to bring out the scissors and cut the beard, whereby a small part of it was lost. When the dwarf saw that, he screamed out,
Is that civil, you toadstool, to disfigure one's face? Was it not enough to clip off the end of my beard? Now you have cut off the best part of it. I cannot let myself be seen by my people. I wish you had been made to run the soles off your shoes.
Then he took out a sack of pearls which lay in the rushes, and without saying a word more he dragged it away and disappeared behind a stone. It happened that soon afterwards the mother sent the two children to the town to buy needles and thread, and laces and ribbons. The road led them across a heath upon which huge pieces of rock lay strewn here and there. Now they noticed a large bird hovering in the air, flying slowly round and round above them. It sank lower and lower, and at last settled near a rock not far off. Directly afterwards they heard a loud, hideous cry. They ran up and saw with horror that the eagle had seized their old acquaintance the dwarf, and was going to carry him off. The children, full of pity, at once took tight hold of the little man, and pulled against the eagle so long that at last he let his booty go. As soon as the dwarf had recovered from his first fright, he cried with his shrill voice,
Could you not have done it more carefully? You dragged at my brown coat so that it is all torn and full of holes, you helpless, clumsy creatures.
Then he took up a sack full of precious stones, and slipped away again under the rock into his hole. The girls, who by this time were used to his thanklessness, went on their way and did their business in the town. As they crossed the heath again on their way home, they surprised the dwarf, who had emptied out his bag of precious stones in a clean spot, and had not thought that anyone would come there so late. The evening sun shone upon the brilliant stones. They glittered and sparkled with all colors so beautifully that the children stood still and looked at them.
Why'd you stand gaping there?
Cried the dwarf, and his ashen gray face became copper red with rage. He was going on with his bad words when a loud growling was heard, and a black bear came trotting towards them out of the forest. The dwarf sprang up in a fright, but he could not get to his cave, for the bear was already close. Then in the dread of his heart he cried,
Dear Mr. Bear, spare me. I will give you all my treasures. Look, the beautiful jewels lying there. Grant me my life. What do you want with such a slender little fellow as I? You would not feel me between your teeth. Come take these two wicked girls. They are tender morsels for you, fat as young quails. For mercy's sake, eat them.
The bear took no heed of his words, but gave the wicked creature a single blow with his paw, and he did not move again. The girls had run away, but the bear called to them.
Snow White and Rose Red, do not be afraid. Wait, I will come with you.
Then they knew his voice and waited. And when he came up to them, suddenly his bearskin fell off, and he stood there, a handsome man, clothed all in gold.
I am a king's son, he said, and I was bewitched by that wicked dwarf who had stolen my treasures. I have had to run about the forest as a savage bear until I was freed by his death. Now he has got his well-deserved punishment.
Snow White was married to him, and Rose Red to his brother, and they divided between them the great treasure which the dwarf had gathered together in his cave. The old mother lived peacefully and happily with her children for many years. She took the two rose trees with her, and they stood before her window, and every year bore the most beautiful roses, white and red. The strong connection between Snow White and Rose Red is evident throughout the story. Their commitment to each other, as well as their willingness to help and protect each other, underscores the importance of sisterly love and support. The sisters exhibit kindness to the bear, who later turns out to be a cursed king's son. This reflects the theme of hospitality and kindness to strangers, even in seemingly unusual circumstances. Despite the dwarf's ungrateful behavior, the girls repeatedly help him when he is in trouble. This demonstrates the virtues of compassion and helpfulness, even towards those who may not appreciate it. The transformation of the bear into a handsome king's son teaches the lesson of not judging others solely based on their appearance. It encourages looking beyond superficial qualities to discover the true nature of individuals. The dwarf's greed and mistrust lead to his downfall. His actions and attitude result in his own punishment. This can be seen as a cautionary tale about the consequences of negative qualities. The fourth fairy tale, Lazy Harry. Harry was lazy, and although he had nothing else to do but drive his goat daily to pasture, he nevertheless groaned when he went home after his day's work was done.
It is indeed a heavy burden,
Said he,
and a wearisome employment to drive a goat into the field this way year after year, till late into the autumn. If one could but lie down and sleep, but no, one must have one's eyes open lest it hurts the young trees, or squeezes itself through the hedge into a garden, or runs away altogether. How can one have any rest, or peace of one's life?
He seated himself, collected his thoughts, and considered how he could set his shoulders free from this burden. For a long time all thinking was to no purpose, but suddenly it was as if scales fell from his eyes.
I know what I will do.
He cried,
I will marry Fat Trina, who is also a goat, and can take mine out with hers, and then I shall have no more need to trouble myself.
So Harry got up, set his weary legs in motion, and went right across the street, or it was no farther, to where the parents of Fat Trina lived, and asked for their industrious and virtuous daughter in marriage. The parents did not reflect long.
Birds of a feather, flock together.
They thought and consented. So Fat Trina became Harry's wife and led out both the goats. Harry had a good time of it and had no work that he required to rest from but his own idleness. He only went out with her now and then and said,
I merely do it that I may afterwards enjoy rest more, otherwise one loses all feeling for it.
But Fat Trina was no less idle.
Dear Harry,
Said she one day,
why should we make our lives so toilsome when there is no need for it, and thus ruin the best days of our youth? Would it not be better for us to give the two goats which disturb us every morning in our sweetest sleep with their bleating to our neighbor, and he will give us a beehive for them. We will put the beehive in a sunny place behind the house and trouble ourselves no more about it. Bees do not require to be taken care of or driven into the field. They fly out and find the way home again for themselves and collect honey without giving the very least trouble.
Thou hast spoken like a sensible woman,
replied Harry.
We will carry out thy proposal without delay, and besides all that, honey tastes better and nourishes one better than goat's milk, and it can be kept longer too.
The neighbor willingly gave a beehive for the two goats. The bees flew in and out from early morning till late evening without ever tiring, and filled the hive with the most beautiful honey, so that in autumn Harry was able to take a whole pitcherful out of it. Hay placed the jug on a board which was fixed to the wall of their bedroom, and as they were afraid that it might be stolen from them, or that the mice might find it, Trina brought in a stout hazel stick and put it beside her bed, so that without unnecessary getting up she might reach it with her hand, and drive away the uninvited guests. Lazy Harry did not like to leave his bed before noon.
He who rises early,
said he,
wastes his substance.
One morning when he was still lying amongst the feathers in broad daylight, resting after his long sleep, he said to his wife,
Women are fond of sweet things, and thou art always tasting the honey in private. It will be better for us to exchange it for a goose with a young gosling, before thou eatest up the whole of it.
But,
answered Trina,
not before we have a child to take care of them. Am I to worry myself with the little geese and spend all my strength on them to no purpose?
Dost thou think,
said Harry,
that the youngster will look after geese? Nowadays children no longer obey. They do according to their own fancy, because they consider themselves cleverer than their parents. Just like that lad who was sent to seek the cow and chased 3 blackbirds.
Oh,
replied Trina,
this one shall fare badly if he does not do what I say. I will take a stick and belabor his skin for him with more blows than I can count. Look, Harry, cried she in her zeal, and seized the stick which she had to drive the mice away with. Look, this is the way I will fall on him. She reached her arm out to strike, but unhappily hit the honey pitcher above the bed.
The pitcher struck against the wall and fell down in fragments, and the fine honey streamed down on the ground.
There lie the goose and the young gosling,
said Harry,
and want no looking after. But it is lucky that the pitcher did not fall on my head. We have all reason to be satisfied with our lot.
And then as he saw that there was still some honey in one of the fragments, he stretched out his hand for it, and said quite gaily,
The remains, my wife, we will still eat with a relish, and we will rest a little after the fright we have had. What matters if we do get up a little later? The day is always long enough.
Yes,
answered Trina.
We shall always get to the end of it at the proper time.
Harry represents laziness, unwilling to work even on simple tasks like taking the goat out to pasture. The story warns about the consequences of laziness and irresponsibility. Trina symbolizes intelligence and cleverness as she suggests a life change through exchanging the goat for beehives. The story honors women's creativity and observational skills. When Harry proposes selling honey for a goose and gosling, Trina shows greed, wanting to keep all the honey for themselves. The consequence is loss, and they have to face a more challenging situation. Despite facing a mishap when the honey pitcher breaks, Harry remains optimistic, focusing on the positive aspects of the unfortunate situation. Optimism can help overcome difficulties and enjoy life more. Do you like the stories I tell today? What lessons have you learned through fairy tales? Please like, share, subscribe to listen to more great fairy tales. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.